I tie this engineering economics to the research that I do in terms of systems effectiveness. Now, we heard from Roger this morning talking about Z10, and we heard from Ms. Overa Munoz about the new ISO standard. And then we'll hear later on from Dr. Kamas about the mining industry's core safety program. Each of those elements of those programs require, or those systems require, that we implement resources to make them work, to make them prevent injuries, illnesses, and God forbid the fatalities that we see in all of our industries. And so one of the things that has struck me over my about 37-year career in industry, government, and academia, and I'm not really a safety person, but I have worked enough with safety people throughout that time to see that the safety profession doesn't necessarily measure and identify the costs the way other aspects of the business do. So there's a few points that I want to make throughout this discussion. And I'll talk some about my research, but I'll talk about, to start off with in the book, just the engineering economics, because we can apply those very common, well-established techniques to any aspect of the business, including safety. So basically, I'll talk a little bit about that book chapter. I'm not going to get too much into the depths of what a loss prevention system is, because you have heard and will hear the rest of the day more about those details. What I want to the point that I would like to make about that is that they can be measured. The effectiveness, the cost, and decisions can be made about whether or not you continue them or change them. And that's a point that I hopefully will make by the end. The idea of safety, too, gives us a little bit of a problem from a cost and return on investment. Although we hear a lot about return on investment in the safety world, we don't actually get revenue back from the investments that we make in safety. What we do is save a lot on cost. And just capturing that as a return is going to be important. And then we'll end up with a few comments about where can we go from here. Point is here, we can measure the effectiveness of safety both in terms of cost and in terms of reduced incidents. So the book, if any of you are interested, is here. The Handbook of Loss Prevention Engineering. We had 40 authors from around the world put together all topics around loss prevention engineering. This particular one has the engineering economics principles in it, and I'll show you just a couple. The traditional net present worth and future worth, some schedule crashing, minimum acceptable rate of return, and those kinds of things, and we'll apply them to safety-related activities. And then we'll talk about how we apply them in terms of a managed system to prevent injuries. So this comes right from the book, and I'll give these next two slides here, and I'll just go back and forth there, are a typical net present worth comparison. In this particular case, we had an existing methanol storage operation that people in the local community were breaking into and drinking the methanol. Very dangerous thing to do. And so we had to do some things to increase and improve the security of that. So we were deciding whether or not we should upgrade the existing facility or completely demolish it and build a new. Now, if you, on the surface, you might ask, well, we should use all of the common today technology and build the best system we can. If that is in fact what's happening, we're leaking methanol, so impacting the environment, and we're also providing an opportunity for people to die if they sneak in and drink the methanol. On the surface, it would look like we should go with the new one. But if we do a net present worth, which is typical of any engineering project, we look at the net present worth of this. This is the existing system. This is the, oh, I can't see it with that. The existing system is called the Defender. And you see down there at the bottom, very small there, its net present worth is $43,549 US. So that's the old system. Because we have to invest, in this case, $147,000 to upgrade it, over 5 years, the 5-year life, it's worth now $43,000. So we go to the Challenger now. This is the new project, also safety related. It only has a net present worth of $19,924. It required a $300,000 investment to start. So, which do you choose? Typical engineering economics comparison applied to a safety-related driver, we see that we have a better security system and nobody sneaks in and dies from drinking the alcohol, and we don't spill anything. The other one still has some weaknesses, the original. So which do you choose? And this is where the dilemma comes in, and this is where the safety profession tends to have a little bit of a problem, and that is the humanitarian drivers versus the monetary and business drivers. The point here is that you still can do the comparison, and there's no reason why not to. The decision then can be made with all information on the table. So another type of is just to compare the internal rates of return of a project. We see that if we are going to be implementing a safety intervention and it requires capital money, and we can't get that capital money for anything less than 30%, that's going to mean, if we have $1 million US investment, that's going to mean that we have a negative $346,000 over that life at that interest rate. So we have to determine what do we have to have the interest rate achieve before we can make, or before we should make that investment. We have to come all the way down to 15% where the net present value is 0. That's the break-even point, using engineering economics again. But the problem is, what if we can't get down to 15%? Do we not implement those preventive measures? That's another decision for local management, but at least they'll have the information that's necessary to make a more informed decision based on the economics as well as the humanitarian drivers. So, very traditional techniques. There's nothing new here. You can apply them to safety-related, loss prevention-related interventions, and I think we should. So, now, interventions tend to become part of, and as the years progress, we're going to see more and more movement towards the management systems that we've heard about. As Dr. Karmas will talk about later this afternoon, the core safety one, we've heard about ANSI Z10 and ISO 45001. So those are coming. Most everybody, most industries will implement something. Implementing those systems will mean dedicating and allocating resources. They'll have cost. Understanding how much of your resources will be committed to those interventions will be important. How much are we willing to spend? How much of our available manpower pool are we willing to commit to the activities that these management systems will drive? It's a question to keep in mind, and we'll talk about what that looks like. So we have to, it's a better approach to manage those interventions and those activities systematically, and these management systems will help us to do that. It will help us to more efficiently, we hope, allocate those resources to the activities that we think will help us achieve the goals. And because they have a cost, we'd like to get a return. And in the case of safety or loss prevention, the return is the absence of loss, the no injuries. But the problem is, how do we know and how do we measure that? So that's always the question. It makes it difficult for a safety-related or loss prevention-related activity. So how do we know when we've achieved the goals? If we have 0 incidents next month, have we achieved our goals? Have we achieved the expectation for a particular resource allocation? How about for 6 months or a year? Have we achieved the goals? That's what makes this difficult, because it's hard to know when you can say, okay, we've achieved the goals. And if we do, let's say we do accept that, how do we know then how much it cost us? How do we know that even if we've achieved the objectives of 0 or no loss, that the resource that we committed and the prevention activity that we implemented was in fact the reason for it? This is the question that I was asked early in my career. How many injuries didn't you have in your mind last year? Can we count that? No, we can't count that. Maybe you can say if we had 3, then we could say all of them but 3. It's not an easy thing to do, and so what we have to do is capture the change in the injury rate and loss rate over time. If we can capture the change, then we have something we can work with quantitatively from an engineering perspective. So let's just talk quickly, and I'll go these quickly because the other speakers will address them. I have rounded up definitions of systems and loss prevention systems, and there are many of them out there. But basically, we have a group of interrelated and often interdependent components that are brought together either in nature or the manufactured world to generate or achieve a common objective. That's pretty straightforward. There are many systems out there. If we put a management tag on it, then it's described often by a structure of a set of processes, procedures, policies, or actions that are implemented within an organization to achieve a defined objective again, or a common function in an efficient and structured way. So that's a management system, and then we bring in the term health and safety, and that can be described as a set of interrelated elements that establish or support occupational health and safety policy and objectives, and the mechanisms are designed and implemented to achieve those objectives. So we want to improve occupational safety and health. So that's on the table now, health and safety management system. I think those of you that have been following the development of both ISO 45001 and the National Mine Association in the U.S. Core Safety, you will be able to align with this definition or something like it. But these definitions exist in all parts of the business. All parts of the business. There's a lot of them out there, and we don't have to focus on any one, but there are a lot of management systems out there. Financial, payroll, procurement, personnel management, inventory control. All of those things have been traditionally managed in a management system. So health and safety, it's finally here, I'll say. Hopefully that will succeed. But that's not the main part of what I want to talk about. I want to talk about the resources that go into implementing them and how we go about measuring them. Now, if you compare all the management systems out there, they have a lot of the same content. The good thing about ISO 45000 is it has had the input of a lot of people around the world. It would truly represent an international standard. In terms of core safety, very strong mining expectation there. So many of them contain the same types of activities and content in terms of policy and planning and accountability and roles and responsibilities and so on. And even at the tactical level, this is where the resources get committed to the hazard identification and risk assessment activities. We heard a lot from Cecilia about employee participation, the education and training. It's amazing to me how much of our available man hours are dedicated to training. Significant amount. Whether or not it's necessary, I can't say unless we're able to measure that effectiveness. Emergency preparedness, incident investigations, management of change, all of those require that we make the decision at the beginning of the day that I'm going to commit 5% of my resources to occupational health, another 5% to training, another 10% to the mechanical integrity program. I have to make those decisions. And those decisions represent the competition between preventing loss and getting the product out the door. Which do we do? And there's just more list of more of the different elements in a typical management system. So the problem here is that the management activities related to preventing injuries for years have been designed really without an empirical basis. They're driven many times by incident rate fluctuations. Incident rates are up. We better do something about it. We throw a bunch of manpower at it. Incident rates are down. Everybody's happy. We can back away. Unfortunately, that roller coaster ride has existed for years. Probably before the 37 years ago that I was have been paying attention to this. This is a phrase that was coined by one of my graduate students who was a petroleum engineer that said he was doing an investigation here on how to quantify these interventions. And he said, you know, it's amazing to me, Dr. Haight, that so many people run their safety and health program based on a feel-good sense of reason. And what he was saying there is that if I'm doing something, anything,